Okay, so what you're gonna try to do is help the companies that's already here.
Right.
Okay, what is the region? Who is the region?
That's one of the things we need to define, quite frankly.
Okay, because you're only talking about 24 million. And if you get 6 or 7 counties in a region, it's not gonna help anybody.
I think the projects, though, are $2 million.
Right, the projects are 2 million. So
I know, but still.
Right.
So who's going to decide what our region is? Is it going to be just us and Highlands and DeSoto, or just us and DeSoto, or how is that going to be determined?
Well, it's partly dependent upon, as I did mention, there is a match requirement. So it's partly dependent on who wants to be involved and who wants to pay to be involved in
Right.
terms of the match requirement. So if you have the resources and you're interested in being involved, then you can be part of that. And I think the folks that, the communities that are invested in it will be in the driver's seat as to who that encompasses. And I believe Hardy is the first in that piece.
Yeah, well, I think we do have some resources to put into something like this,
Right.
where I don't think very many other counties will.
And I think you're right. I mean, quite frankly, one of the reasons why we were so interested in this opportunity in the first place is because it's $24 million. It's ostensibly a national effort, but it was announced at the Florida Citrus Industry Conference as something they were bringing to the Florida citrus industry, and it was clear that the focus was going to be on Florida. There are a couple different elements within the program, so there's some of it that's going to go to research and extension. There is also this regional partnerships element, but I can guarantee you that you can probably count the regional partnerships on one hand in terms of the folks that would be reasonably looked at in terms of an opportunity for this. So we have a great opportunity and in terms of being able to make something happen in this region with this money.
We wouldn't be tied into a region in North Florida, would we?
Absolutely not. We would be able to define the region that we'd want. That would be part of the proposal effort, and it would be done in coordination with the community and in coordination with the board and others over the course of the next month and couple months, in what specifically the region entails. And we had sort of envisioned it initially as Hardy County Plus, but we can talk about what that actually is.
Is it possible for Hardy County to be a region?
I think it depends partly on whether USDA is willing for Hardy County to be a region in and of itself, or whether they would want it to be a little bit broader. I believe USDA would probably want it to be a little bit broader, but we could probably start with Hardy County as the initial focus, and then expand the purview of it over time as we sort of the whole idea in entrepreneurial lexicon is nail it and then scale it. So we nail it first in the region.
I wouldn't have a problem including Fort Meade. Will you go back to the first? I got a couple of questions. Start over.
Sure.
And right there, go back. The purpose. Could you explain the purpose to me?
Certainly. So the whole purpose of these regional partnerships is in a couple of areas. One area of focus is trying to kind of take some of these new technologies and so on that are coming out of the research and extension system and get them into actual commercialization in the commercial marketplace. And that's partly within the citrus community, but it's also partly within some of these other value-added bio-based product, nutraceutical product pathways. So if, for example, there's a new bio-based product that's being developed out of the University of Florida Extension System, and there are a few, there may be an opportunity for Hardy County to attract that or bring that into the incubator and say, we'll help you here in Hardy County develop that, use the fill line, basically commercialize that product here in Hardy County using the resources that we have with our value-added agriculture incubator. And that would be a wonderful opportunity and directly in line with what USDA is looking to do with this type of money.
Okay, and this money to the incubator would be for local Hardy County people.
Yes, the whole idea would be to set up we would have the Hardy Agricultural Regional Task Force, which is the task force which would oversee the project, and that would be, and we would, IDA would be a member of that. There would be others as well. But the whole idea would be, if Hardy County is putting in money to this, Hardy County would have a say in how that money is spent. Absolutely.
Okay, I don't remember which way we need to go on this thing, either back or, I had another, you're going too fast, man, I can't.
I'm sorry, okay.
Start over at the beginning.
Okay.
All right, go slow, let me see if I can remember. Okay, the purpose was the first one I wanted to ask you,
Right.
okay, there must be another one. Well, I'm sure it was back the other way. That's okay. That's all right. Thank you.
Okay. No problem.
I had a couple of questions. I think it was
Absolutely.
on the first slide when you talked about the two different types of projects.
These?
Yes, I could not write as fast as you were going. But I'm assuming that what you're talking about for Hardy County is more of the second type of project.
Absolutely.
Capacity building
Right.
program for a rural community.
University of Florida Extension has a lock on the first, so.
That was my other question, what she support capacity thing. Explain that. That's what I was.
So these capacity building programs are exactly what we're talking about. So it's one thing to have an incubator and have a facility. It's another thing to have all of the services and the support network that surround that facility that allow the enterprises that are part of that facility to succeed. Whether it's the financing, whether it's the business planning, whether it's the the connection to customers, whether it's the connection to the talent and the workforce. There's all of the element around it that you have to also build, and that's the capacity that they're looking to support.
Okay, so am I getting the drift that this project is strictly toward the incubator?
We had developed it around the incubator because that was an existing investment that was here in the community that we could build this network around. It isn't necessarily only about the incubator in any sense. We want to be able to support the local farm community in order to help them identify new crops and commodities that they can grow that can feed into this new economic engine of value-added products. It's also about what are some of the other support services, even some of the, Wauchula State Bank, some of the other folks in the region who may be able to provide financing services. There's a lot of different elements to this. It isn't just about one building that happens to be, at the south end of Wauchula.
I have some questions for you on what you were talking about with the matching funds, and some projects may have a matching requirement. When you talk about that, do you know if the intent is to show our investment as a community, or if it actually is dollar for dollar? And where I'm going with that is, would they be willing to consider, if part of the purpose would be to include and evaluate our incubator program and maybe identify those opportunities and implement them, would they consider the investments we've made in our incubator project as part of our matching grant?
I would have to say it would probably depend, and we'd have to get into what the specific investments that had been made, whether those investments had been matched against another type of federal resource. If you've gotten another federal grant to do something, at some point you might not be able to use those resources, but you might be able to use other resources that you've put in. We'd also probably have to get some clarification from USDA themselves about whether investments that had been made previous to the project period would be eligible, since the project period would start probably sometime in the middle of next year, and whether they'd be willing to accept those or not. Those are all things that we'd have to look at and work with USDA. But USDA is usually pretty good about providing some feedback on those and what's eligible and what's not.
Mike, can you describe capacity building programs?
Yes. So, well, So the whole idea of a capacity building program is to build the ability, is to enhance the ability of the community to support a business or an activity. So in the case of small entrepreneurial firms that are working in say artisanal honey or other types of new nutraceutical products where you're creating something and then selling in a natural food market or so on. What can we do in the community to help support that? So what can we do within the local school system to enable the training to allow the people to be able to work in those types of positions that would be created by that type of enterprise? What can we do in building a network with the Regional Business Development Center or other partners to be able to provide the business planning and support services that entrepreneur will need to be able to attract capital, to be able to build their business? What can we do in terms of introducing them to the local food markets and the other marketplaces so they can get directly to their customers? All of those elements of it, that's what capacity building is kind of, you can look at it, another term for it is economic gardening. You sort of take what you have and you fertilize it a little bit, you put a little money in it, a little bit of time and effort, and you watch it grow.
But in this instance, taking what we have being citrus, we have a real threat in that situation. We have had several brief discussions in this room and certainly in the BOCC room, but citrus is, it's struggling right now. And I think everyone in this room that's connected to citrus has a keen sense of awareness of how serious this problem is, but I'm not certain everyone in this county understands what the multiplier effects of the reduction in citrus are going to be for us. And this money that was appropriated by Congress pretty much delegates the direct fight of citrus greening to IFAS and the University of Florida. But then there's also another aspect of it that gives the communities that are being impacted by citrus an opportunity to recover. How broad a latitude do we have? I mean, are we looking at peaches? Are we looking at blueberries? Are we looking at medical marijuana? How far are we going here to fully understand what alternative crops can be available for this community to diversify their agricultural production?
Again, I think that's a question that we need to get some clarification from USDA on. My understanding of the way it's structured, at least in the way it's written, is it's pretty broad in terms of the range of things that you can look at in diversification of a community on this side of the thing, on this side of the opportunity. On the other side of the opportunity, in terms of the research and extension, it's very specifically focused on citrus greening. But in terms of the impact and the economic diversification side, it's broader as in terms of my own read in it, but that's certainly something we're going to have to get some clarification from USDA.
It sounds like to me there's possibly some duplication of efforts. I mean, this data, the people in the citrus industry here that are affected by greening / canker / whatever unknown diseases down the pike, I mean, they pretty much stay attuned to the Citrus Commission, to Florida Citrus Mutual, to IFAS. I mean, why do we need someone to coordinate somebody picking up the phone and talking to IFAS or the Citrus Commission?
Well, specifically in regard to support within a regional community, you mean, or in?
Sure. The people involved in these types of events with their livelihood, right, are very much attuned to what's going on in that industry.
Right.
I don't know that they need and I'm going to use this term loosely, I don't know that they need a community organizer to tell us that we need to talk to IFAS or the Citrus Commission or to see what the latest thing is coming down the pike.
Well, personally, I think my own opinion, and I completely understand that feeling. The citrus community is focused on the issues in the citrus industry, and to the extent that there are opportunities that are beyond the citrus industry, I think there are elements and opportunities here that are not being completely focused on in the same way, and they certainly aren't being focused on in terms of what's best for a specific regional community in the same way. That said, there are, this is an opportunity for the region to be able to take advantage of this. It is, partly on the region and the community to determine whether you're interested. But we wanted to, we took the step of putting the concept in to give us the opportunity to apply in the future. We're not obligated to apply in any way. This is an opportunity which is available for the community, and it's incumbent upon the community to decide whether and how and in what way they want to engage.
Energy Florida.
Yes.
How does that involved in citrus? Are you a consultant? What is Energy Florida? What is their goal? What do they do?
We presented on this at the last month.
Yeah, I wasn't here, so you're.
It's okay. That's fine. We are a nonprofit organization that works with a lot of different communities around the state on economic diversification. We began in the Central Florida region working on diversification of the aerospace and defense industry into the energy industry. That's where we started. But over time, through a couple of projects we've done, we did one major project called the Clean Energy Jobs Accelerator, where we did basically a cluster development effort for Central Florida.
Did it succeed?
It did succeed. We were one of it was part of a federal program called the Jobs Accelerator Program. We just held the national conference for that, kind of the conclusion of that particular program at the end of last month. And of 20, actually about 30 different programs around the country, ours, I would say, was in the top 2 or 3 in terms of the results we were able to.
This is a national program, right?
It's a national program, but it was
divided by 50 states. How much is that per state?
Oh, for this particular program,
yes.
It's not divided by 50 states. I can guarantee you that. It's a national program, but it's specifically focused on the citrus industry. There are only 3 states that they have identified as really major citrus states, which are Florida, California, and Texas. And there are a couple of counties in Arizona, but Arizona is not really even a focus of this. So there are 3 states for which this $24 million is focused. And it was made very clear at the Florida Citrus Industry Conference when the Assistant Secretary for USDA came down that it was primarily focused on Florida.
What is the cost? Thank you. I kind of look at this in two segments over the next 3 months.
Right.
Number one, what's it going to cost to get us to the point where we find out more information and find out if we're in the running and should submit a formal application? Okay, that's step 1.
Right.
Step 2 is what would it cost to submit the formal application? I guess those 2 steps would get us to approximately October the 1st.
Right.
What are we looking at?
In terms of the first element of this, in terms of what has needed to be done has already been done. It is we basically have done that in appreciation of the opportunity for the community. So that has been done. We basically just have to wait until we hear from USDA one way or the other next month. Most likely next month. If we don't hear next month, then they're probably going to move the deadline because there won't be enough time to put the whole thing together. In terms of what it would take to go beyond that and put together the full application, we've been working to come up with some idea of what that would be. We can certainly talk about what that would be. We think I think it'd be somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $25,000 in terms of time. It'd be about 150, 170,000, 150 or 170 hours of work.
And that would get us through the formal application.
That would get
process.
through the formal application process. Quite frankly, in terms of our organization, we would only bill for the time that we would spend. We don't,
Where, Mike, are we gonna get these ideas?
We can't hear you, Mr. Green.
Where are we gonna get these ideas of where we wanna start investing and looking to go? And then where do we get the key component members to join in? And the reason I'm saying this, a couple of reasons. The Citrus Foundation Board, that they're getting all the money on greening research and all. When they got all that arranged, the majority of the intellectual properties got tied up by the University of Florida. Isn't that right, Mike? I'm pretty sure that got tied up, so they are in control with a bunch of the information that you're talking about, as far as cures for different diseases or byproducts or anything else. They have that. And, I think it's a good idea, but I think we're just a long ways. It's going to take a lot of work for me to get this thing kind of focused in on where we need to be, starting at.
Well, I would highlight that, which I went to this slide on the project activities. I mean, the very first element of this is to map what's available and what's here in the region, what's here in the community, and basically to identify the set of things that are already here, and then focus on those and derivatives of those. And that would be where I would suggest you start. Quite frankly, I mean, our organization, as I mentioned, has done this before with the Jobs Accelerator project and some other in the Central Florida region, and it expanded statewide. And we started with, what specific capabilities and companies are there? What can we build around those? And we have been pretty successful in developing some strong industry working groups and collaborative partnerships around, specifically that type of activity, where you simply, you identify the dots and then you connect dots, and then you bring in, whatever you need to grow those dots.
A couple examples is the Seminole Tribe of Florida just started feeding all their cattle. They got connected with the North Florida corn growers, and so they're shipping their cattle to North Florida, bringing them back to Center Hill to meat packing, and they're basically furnishing quite a bit of restaurants across the state of Florida now, and the label's fresh from Florida. I think anything we can do along those lines, and as far as the logistics of who should be involved and all, if it's involved with citrus, I think we almost need to go with the Peace River Citrus Growers Association and maybe Highlands County, which to me, if we can get any of the infrastructure here, we would be kind of the headquarters for it. But when you look at acres of citrus and getting the money, we're going to need all of that to be involved in. I think another thing you might want to look at, Mike, is corporate companies. Like right now in Henry County, Monsanto has a deal down there where they're growing seed corn and some other varieties, but they've got probably 30 people working down there in that thing. And a lot of these companies, as far as pharmaceutical or anything else, different traits and all, they're putting a lot of money in growing these new crops and looking at what we can do, to provide some of these crops. So I think that would be another thing. Anything we can do to replace the acres of citrus that's died and give us some type of input coming from those acres is definitely a plus.
Those are some great ideas, and those are exactly the types of things that I think we want to try to capture and bring in. And the more ideas we have, the better, actually. And the more, this is all about an engagement and a collaborative process and trying to get, this is of the community, by the community, for the community.
Mike, can you provide some clarity on the cost to the IDA? You had indicated that to complete the application may cost as much as $25,000. If we are successful with the grant award, how exactly is that money dispersed, and then what cost would we expect once the grant is awarded, to continue the project?
Well, I believe there are some different ways that this could be structured, and I think we would be very happy to talk with the board about how those arrangements might be able to be made in large part. I believe that we would be able to support some of the activities, a lot of the activities of the project out of the project budget itself. So there would be a project budget, which some of it would be federal money, some of it would be contributed from local and private sources, and that the project would basically the activities of the project would be contained within that. There would not be an additional cost on top of the project itself. But that's one of those elements that we would be discussing and kind of developing as we develop the application itself and as we develop the project plan. Now, one element of what USDA is trying to do and make sure of is that the money that is contributed by the federal government is kind of the initial piece for what would be expected to be an ongoing initiative. And I think one of the things that we as an organization want to do is to be able to, it is about capacity building. It's about building the ability of the community to support the elements of the community itself. And so, working with the IDA and the EDC, working with the State College, working with the other partners that are in the community and have been and will be in the community to be able to support the activities of this going forward, whether or not Energy Florida is involved, years out.
So what is needed from an action standpoint from this board over what timeline if we're going to move forward with this?
I know you mentioned that the application was completed and submitted, and there would be a review process before we know if we move on to the next step.
Right.
Are there things that need to be happening between now and then that will cost us money?
Between now and finding out from the USDA, the answer is no. At that point, we would, when we hear from the EDA, and there are some things that we should be looking at, if the board is interested in moving forward on this, I should step back. If the board is interested in moving forward on this, there is some partnership and some outreach work that probably needs to be done in terms of building the the support structure to support the application, because we're going to have to put together a coalition of a number of different groups. So we're going to have to do some outreach to the State College. We're going to have to do some outreach to the Extension Service. We're going to have to do some outreach to some of the other players in this to, first of all, inform them that this is potentially on the horizon, and at least put them on notice that we may be getting back in touch with them very soon with a short-term time horizon when we do. That said, once we do hear, if we do hear from in the affirmative from USDA, we'd probably have to do a fairly quick process with the board in terms of identifying and putting forward prospective match commitment that would be able to be put into a letter of commitment that would go into a grant application package due at the end of September. So if there is a board meeting in September, we need to do something on a timeline that we'd be able to get a vote in September, and then enough time between then and the end of September to be able to get the rest of the budget, put together in time, which shouldn't be a lot of time. But there are some of those types of elements that are sort of rate limiting steps in how this would move forward. Is that clear enough?
So we have time to advertise for quotes. I'm not certain that you wouldn't be a sole source supplier, but I think it would be easier if we could RFP this.
There is some time, there is, well, there's one wrinkle in this, which is that in being able to put this in time and put this in time with USDA, we put in the initial application as Energy Florida in coordination with the other partners. But it was submitted under Energy Florida's auspices because that, in order to do it in time to make the deadline, that was how it was structured. We may be able to talk to USDA about whether that is extensible or how that partnership would happen. But there is it was actually submitted as Energy Florida as one of the partners and the contact organization for USDA. So we do need to kind of think about that in terms of the overall context of it. But that was one element of in doing this and putting it forward in time to be able to be eligible. That was one of the decisions that was made, and we just went forward and did it.
What's it?
Go ahead.
So should we RFP?
Lose my thoughts.
Should we, if we have time to RFP, I would like to RFP it. If we don't, then we have to do some other procurement. We have to address an alternative procurement methodology.
There is probably 30 days before we hear from USDA. I leave it up to you and the board's discretion how you want to handle the procurement elements of this. We're happy to help support whichever way you and the board decide to go.
Okay, Tom?
Won't you have to know what the region's going to be before you'll know how much each county or city is going to be a part of this 25,000?
So to some extent, yes, that's true. Now we had been working with, some different elements of the region, and we are, part of this too is, as we said, whoever is willing and able to put in the resources to make this happen is going to get first crack at the resources that are going to be coming from the project too. So, there's a certain element of, the ability to determine the direction based on who is footing the bill.
Well, if it's a regional project, who's going to write the rules?
The thought would be that and the whole reason for putting this together is to bring together, some of the different, players in the community, in the region, and say, how do you, within the community, think that this should be structured? We would be happy to provide some guidance along those lines. I mean, one of the things that I would say, is the more that you can have this driven by the local business people and have local business involvement in, engagement on, and input to the process of developing the project, the more likely it's going to be useful to the local business community, and the less, quite frankly, that, regional distinctions matter to some degree, because to the business folks, they just want to get the business done. They don't care so much about what side of the line it's on.
Well, my biggest concern right now is that you keep throwing regional and incubator into the same mix. The incubator is 100% supported by the citizens of Hardee County's money. The incubator is for Hardee County entrepreneurs, not Highlands, not DeSoto, Okay, when you start taking federal money, we know what happens then. The school systems or anything else that you get involved with, they make the rules. You don't. No matter what your rules say, they're gonna say, if we give you this money, we're gonna make the rules. And that concerns me. That Hardy County citizens are gonna be in a couple of $3 million in this incubator. And then they're gonna come in there and say, well, you're gonna let everybody in the state use it for free. And that concerns me.
Well, to some degree, there's also and I completely see your concern, and I fully understand, you know, the concern, and it's a valid concern. You know, when you take federal money, the federal government does. There are strings attached, no doubt about it. You know, another way to look at this also, though, is that by having this as a resource and available, there is also, I mean, these are called clusters for a reason, because they cluster around the resources and the key elements that support them. So, you know, by having the incubator and by having it to some degree available to some folks from other places, there is also a very strong attraction mechanism where, you know, more of their activity or more of their operations may in fact come here, because they come here, they make use of it, they see, you know, the other companies and the other things that are going on here in the region, and they're more involved in this community, and that's a net positive. So there are, you know, these sort of network and positive effects of collaboration also. But absolutely, there is a, you know, it will there will be strings attached.
Well, that is my fear, that people will come from other counties, use our incubator, and then leave, not stay here. They're going to go back where they came from. If they would stay here and do their business here, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. But they're not going to stay here. They're going to come use our facility, and they're going to leave. That's the concern I have. If you can put new rules where you come here and use it for a year and a half, whatever, then you got to stay in Hardy County, which you can't make them do, then I wouldn't have a problem with it.
But I mean, there are ways where, you know, there are, quite frankly, ways where you could, you know, even though you're taking federal money, you can still have user fees. So, for example, if someone comes in from somewhere else, you can instill a user fee, and they can pay for part of part of the facility that they're using, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. But again, you know, it's all in how you look at it and how sort of big picture or big tent you want to be about the opportunity that's there. But that, again, that's part of the opportunity that the community has in defining how you as Hardy County, how you as the region, as the citizens and business people of this community want to you know, take advantage of the opportunity, or how you want to define the scope of the proposal that's put forward.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the rules. And I don't want people from everywhere in the world coming in here and wearing that machinery out. That machinery's not cheap that we got down there. Wearing it out and then leaving, you know, that's just me.
Let me make a couple of comments. A little different than what the current line of discussion is, but Hardy County has had about 45,000 acres of citrus that have produced about 13 million boxes of oranges. And that number may be 50% of that, certainly from a production standpoint in the very near future. And the loss of the multiplier effect to the harvester and the caretaker and the grower, the banker, is tremendous for us. And my concern has been that there is an initiative to try to help communities such as ours to retool, to diversify, especially in the realm of agricultural diversification, and this grant opportunity is available. If we chose to do nothing, if that was the pleasure of the board, at least you had an opportunity to consider it. And if that's what you prefer to do, then we don't have to attempt to participate in this program. I don't think we would ever put ourselves in a position of restricting our intentions with the incubator. We had felt like because we had this money that it was a good place to propose to the federal government as an investment match source in order to qualify for the grant. We may have other areas of investment match that we can utilize in order to qualify for the grant of money that we have already spent that does not put those projects in any type of operational jeopardy. So there's been no, well, at least we've had no conversation that proceeding with the grant was going to diminish any of the projects that we had started. And I can tell you, if that was to happen, we would probably have to bolt and run from it.
I didn't understand nothing you said.
Well, thank you. Were you chewing while you were thinking?
Well, no, it's not, it's these things right here. It's not tobacco. You're talking about the incubator. It seems like the incubator is the focus of this whole program today. Now, if we use the incubator as a match, then you're saying anybody can use it.
Donald, we don't have a clue about that. If you don't want to do this, we don't have to do it. There's been no consideration that the incubator as a match was going to be threatened in its existence. We hope that the incubator as a match and its existence in Hardee County will be recognized by the federal government as our part of contribution to begin to deal with the circumstances related to greening. I don't think there's any intention of taking that project and shackling it with a bunch of federal rules. If there is, we won't do it.
Well, how far along have we got to get before we know that? I mean, it seems like to me that we ought to have this regional group.
Well, quite frankly,
defined before we put money in this thing.
Quite frankly, it was not our intention to, shackle the community with any additional federal rules either. We're here to simply try to bring this opportunity to the fore and bring it as an opportunity for the community, and we think that it could be a net positive for the community. In terms of how this can develop, first of all, there are a couple of red light, green light moments here. Obviously, the first one is whether or not USDA comes back and says we'd like you to do or invite you to do a full application, and whether they put any stipulations or parameters on that invitation. And I can't say that at all whether there will or will not be. Secondarily, as I believe I mentioned, there may be an opportunity, say for example, if you do work with the state university system, there may be opportunity to reduce the requirements for match, which may allow a number of things to happen at less cost for the community, even above and beyond what would normally be available. And third, even if we get all the way to the point where we submit an application, they give us notification of funding, and they also give us a list of conditions. That's part of the negotiation process for an award. The community, even at that point, could say, well, we aren't interested in meeting your conditions for the award, and we'd like to return the money. And that is always an opportunity. You are not ever obligated to take it until you actually sign the funding contract, which would be at some point in 2015.
But the application would cost us $25,000 to see. That's what it's going to cost us before we even know who the region is.
No, you would know. You would know who. Well, the application process, is going to take. This is a $2 million award. It's a lot of work that goes into one of those types of awards.
I'm not questioning your time and the cost, but that's what it's going to cost us. Is $25,000 as a county, not a region, because we don't know who the region is. Now, if somebody else joins our region after we get the grant, then can we kick them out? Can we say, no, it's our region? Or we got to let them in and then pay us $2,000 or $3,000 to be a member, or how does that work?
Well, that goes back to the rules of how the whole thing is set up, and that would be part of the discussion of how it would work. But you can, basically make the requirement that if another community wanted to participate, that they would need to provide match in order to do so. That's entirely consistent, and I don't think USDA would have any problem with that whatsoever.
Mike, the region will be determined by the type of project almost one.
Yes, well,
We
that's
could
an
have a
extremely
project
important.
that
Yeah.
could basically, we could fulfill all the needs in Hardee County with just what we need. Then again, we find another project that says we're gonna need 30 million boxes of oranges. We can't do that in Hardee County.
Right.
That's when we might have to. So
Right.
to me, the project will determine the size of the region.
That's precisely it. I mean, realistically, you focus on what you want to accomplish, and then you look at the footprint that you need to have to be able to do that.
Well, is the focus on farming, or is the focus on business, creating new businesses?
The focus is on building value-added agricultural businesses that can take the agricultural commodities from the region and then, can them, kind of add value to them, and then resell them to the wholesale or the retail marketplace. And that's another one of those elements of exactly what element of that industry we want to focus on. But that's the sector that the incubator is focused on, and those are the resources that the incubator has, and that's the reason why we chose that sector.
I look at this very much like when FERBA wanted to apply for the broadband grants from the federal government. And, we had a company that we funded for assets in Hardee County, and we agreed to allow them to use what was our contribution of those assets. They used those assets to secure the broadband grant for the entire region. Now, the big difference, and I, in agreement with Donald, I think that we want to know that we are the primary stakeholder and that we have more control in the process. And then on the other end of that, I think that they clearly knew and understood what the expectations of that grant and the deliverables, what should they get for the $2 million. That, I think that might be a little bit of what I'm still a little bit unclear on, and perhaps that's something that is clarified through the process as the project is better defined. At this point, I don't think that you're actually asking us for any money or funding, but we may have to pick that up in August if we start getting any information that we might be selected,
Right.
so that we can be prepared to fund the full application by September. Is that
Right.
what I'm understanding?
Basically, yes, that's about the timeline that we need to, right, we would need to have prospectively a decision in August on doing the full application, and the full application would basically be through the month of September, and there may be a match commitment that would be associated with that the board would have to look at in September.
So either by September, we would either need to agree to match whatever the grant might be, or have other partners that we've brought in, in those industries to agree to partner with us,
Right.
and what they would be willing to commit to for the match.
Right. Correct, and part of the development process for the proposal would be to go out and talk to those other partners and basically solicit contributions in order to be part of the overall regional initiative.
So if we agreed to do that in, let's say, the August meeting, do you think that time frame is going to be enough to facilitate those meetings and to define who we feel like the partners should be?
Well, it's going to be highly intense, but we're not going to be alone in having that time frame. Everybody's going to have the same time frame to be able to get this in. So it's probably going to be 6 weeks, and that's going to be 6 weeks for everybody. So that's just, it is what it is. And that's one reason why it's that amount of time. It's a pretty intense effort.
Do you know who these people are that we'll be competing against?
In terms of the specific regional partnerships initiative, quite frankly, the initial applications were only due on Friday of last week. We have our connections in the community. I have not heard of anyone else in Florida that's put one in yet, but I would not be surprised if there was. We may know in the near future of others who have put in for that particular element of this. But when we find that out, we'll certainly be.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I was just curious if they had $25,000 to throw in there.
And that's kind of what I was going at now. We've got some corporations here in Florida in the citrus business that they can take off and do anything they want. They got the financial backing to do it. And that would be my only watch out on who's your partners and who can do it. And, we'd have to get something from the USDA to give us protection for a few years till we at least get established. Because if we come in here and get something that's pretty successful, and when you start looking at the U.S. sugars and
You need a mic or something up there.
I got it on. I'll keep hollering, but
Thank you. Sorry.
But when we look at some of the size of some of these growers, $3 or $4, $5 million is nothing to them. And that's just kind of a watch out I'd see from some of this.
Yeah. The other element of this is, to some degree, if you have something that's going on that's maybe of interest, that may be an element to help bring them into this community too, because they may have, right, if there's something for them to be involved in, they'll get on it. So, and they will. So.
Okay, any further questions or discussion from board members?
Just one question, and you may have covered it. I had to step out, and I apologize for that. In my mind, Energy Florida, how does that equate to a greening expert, or how do you guys get involved in the USDA?
Can't hear.
So one of the elements of, and there was a similar question which I sort of answered and sort of didn't, and I'll get back to it. But so our organization developed over time. One of the things that we did, was basically go out and listen to the community. In the Jobs Accelerator effort that we did before, was go out and listen to the community, and we had several different industry working groups that were a part of that initiative. One of those was agricultural and bio-based products, and that has developed over time into a very strong emphasis on what can be done to help support the citrus community, what can be done to help support alternative uses of citrus material. So some of this was looking at, can we use some of this citrus material that's got to be removed for a biomass purpose? Some of it is also just in general, what are some other things that can be done around diversification in the region and in these areas. We've had some experience and support in doing this in the Space Coast and Central Florida area, and some of the same processes are very similar, even though the industry itself is different. But how you go about helping support entrepreneurs, doing the Lean Launchpad, and a lot of the different elements of building businesses are very similar processes.
Okay, I think we have had a lot of discussion to kind of take in and think about. I'm sure that there might be some additional questions for Mike, but what I'd like to do is go ahead and we'll take about a 10-minute break, kind of give everybody a few minutes to process it. We usually try to break around 10. We may not have additional questions when we come back, and we'll just be aware and take that in, but why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute recess and give us an opportunity to think about it and see if we have any additional questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and on break, if anyone would like to come and take a look at the engine, motor, everything that has been brought by PF Man, please feel free to come do so.